Power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it sits quietly on a shelf, waiting, patient, contained in glass, until the moment someone removes the cap and releases what was never meant to be controlled. This is the story of invisible power. Not the kind that dominates through force, the kind that influences without being seen. That changes everything, while appearing to change nothing. It reshapes destiny through molecules too small to perceive, but too potent to resist. Invisible power in a bottle. And the woman who discovered that some things should remain sealed. Her name was Catherine, 39 years old, a research chemist at a pharmaceutical company, where she developed compounds designed to alter human biology in controlled, predictable ways. She understood molecules, understood how structure determined function, how tiny variations in chemical bonds could create massive differences in biological response. She was good at her work. Precise, methodical. She'd published papers, earned patents, and built a reputation as someone who could solve problems others couldn't. Her specialty was targeted delivery systems, finding ways to make compounds reach specific receptors, affect specific outcomes. Nothing wasted, nothing accidental. Pure efficiency. Her life reflected that same precision. A controlled environment, a regulated schedule. Relationships managed like experiments, with variables minimized and outcomes optimized. She lived alone because cohabitation introduced too many uncontrolled factors. She dated occasionally, but always ended things before emotional chemistry became too complicated. She didn't wear perfume. She considered it primitive. A crude application of volatile compounds, designed to overwhelm rather than influence. No specificity, no targeting, just chemical saturation, hoping for a desired response. It offended her scientific sensibility. The discovery happened by accident. She was working late, testing a new delivery mechanism for a pharmaceutical compound. The syntheses had failed. Again. The fourth time that week. The compound was effective in isolation but couldn't survive delivery to its target site. It broke down too quickly, losing its potency before it could do any good. She was frustrated, tired, and she made an error she normally wouldn't make. She added a catalyst in the wrong sequence. That should have ruined the entire batch. It should have required starting over from scratch. Instead, something unexpected happened. The compound stabilized, but not in the way she'd intended. It had bonded with its carrier molecule in a configuration she'd never seen before, creating something that shouldn't exist. Something that was chemically impossible according to everything she understood about molecular interaction. She analyzed it, ran it through every test, every scanner, every diagnostic tool in the lab. The results were consistent, but inexplicable. The compound had properties that violated basic chemistry. It remained stable in conditions that should destroy it. It penetrated barriers that should block it. It affected biological systems in ways that shouldn't be possible with something so structurally simple. She should have documented it, should have reported the anomaly, should have submitted it for peer review. That was the protocol. That was how science worked. But something made her hesitate. It made her want to understand it fully before exposing it to scrutiny. It made her want to protect it like a secret rather than share it like a discovery. She took a sample home. She told herself it was for further study, for running additional tests in a more controlled environment. But really, it was because the compound made her uneasy in ways she couldn't articulate. Like she'd created something that shouldn't exist. Something that operated outside the rules she'd spent her entire career learning. At home that night, she examined it under different conditions, exposed it to various stimuli, and watched how it responded. The compound was remarkably stable, remarkably persistent, and when she accidentally exposed it to the air, it volatilized immediately. It became a vapor. It became a scent. The fragrance was subtle, barely detectable, not pleasant or unpleasant, just present. Something that registered without being obvious. Something that existed at the very threshold of perception. She breathed it in. She felt nothing dramatic. No immediate effect. Just the compound entering her respiratory system, crossing into her bloodstream, finding its way to her brain, and binding to receptors she hadn't realized existed. Over the next hour, something changed. Not her thoughts, not her emotions. Something more fundamental. Her presence, the space she occupied, felt different. Heavier, more significant, like she'd become more real, more solid, more impossible to ignore. She looked at herself in the mirror. Same face, same body, but something had shifted. She appeared more defined, more substantial. like the resolution had increased, like she'd been a photograph and was now a three-dimensional object. The next morning, she went to work wearing trace amounts, just the residue from the night before. Nothing intentional, nothing deliberate, but people noticed. Not consciously, they just responded differently. They made eye contact longer. They listened more carefully when she spoke. They gave her ideas more consideration. In a meeting discussing her failed synthesis, she presented the accidental discovery. She explained what she'd created and described its unusual properties. She expected skepticism, demands for proof, the usual scientific resistance to claims that violated established understanding. Instead, her supervisor approved immediate additional research, provided funding, assigned a team, told her to prioritize this over all her other projects. The response was unprecedented, disproportionate to what she'd actually demonstrated. Like people were responding to something beyond her words, beyond her evidence, to something invisible she was broadcasting. She realized what was happening. The compound was still in her system. It was still affecting how people perceived her, making her more convincing, more authoritative, more impossible to dismiss or ignore. It wasn't changing what she said. It was just changing how people responded to it. She should have stopped. Should have disclosed what was happening. Should have recognized the ethical violation. But the power was intoxicating, not because she wanted to manipulate people, but because she'd spent her entire career being dismissed, being questioned, having to prove herself repeatedly in ways her male colleagues never did. And suddenly, people just believed her. They just trusted her. They just gave her what she'd always deserved, but never received. She synthesized more. She began wearing it deliberately. Small amounts, precisely calibrated, just enough to affect perception without being detectable. Just enough to tip interactions in her direction without being obvious manipulation. Her career accelerated. Proposals were approved. Funding was granted. Promotions were offered. Everything that had been difficult became easy. Every door that had been closed swung wide open. Not because her work improved, but because people's response to her work changed. Because her invisible power made resistance impossible. But something else was happening. The compound was accumulating, building up in her system. What had started as a subtle influence was becoming obvious control. People weren't just listening to her anymore. They were deferring to her, agreeing with her even when she was wrong, treating her like an authority even in areas far outside her expertise. A colleague challenged her in a meeting. He questioned her methodology. It was a valid criticism, a professional disagreement, standard scientific discourse. But Catherine felt rage, not at the criticism, but at the challenge to her authority, at the resistance to her influence. She responded with a hostility completely disproportionate to the situation. She shut down the discussion and made it clear that questioning her was unacceptable. The colleague apologized, withdrew his criticism. But Catherine saw fear in his eyes, not respect. Fear, like he'd recognized something dangerous, something that wouldn't tolerate opposition. She went home that night and looked at the bottle, at what she'd created, at the invisible power that had become visible control, at the influence that had become domination. She'd wanted to be heard, but it ended up making it impossible for anyone to disagree. She'd wanted respect, but it created fear. She tried to stop using it. She lasted 2 days, but without it, she felt powerless. She felt like she'd lost something essential, like people were seeing her clearly for the first time and she was inadequate, like the compound hadn't enhanced her. It had become her. It had replaced whatever authentic authority she'd once possessed with a chemical substitute she could unfunction without. She went back to using it. But now, she understood what it was. Not a tool, an addiction, not an enhancement, a replacement. She'd become dependent on invisible power because it had erased her ability to trust her own presence. It had made her believe that without chemical assistance, she was insufficient. 3 months after the discovery, her supervisor called her in. He said there were concerns that her behavior had become erratic, that colleagues were uncomfortable, that she needed to take a leave of absence, seek help, and address whatever was happening. Catherine understood then that the power had become visible, that what had started as subtle influence had become obvious manipulation, that people had stopped responding to her expertise and started responding to her coercion, that her invisible power had become a visible tyranny. She destroyed the remaining compound, erased her research, deleted her notes. What she'd created was too dangerous to exist, too easy to abuse, too likely to transform influence into control, to replace authentic authority with chemical domination. The withdrawal was brutal. Without the compound, she felt transparent, insubstantial, like she'd lost her density. Like people could see right through her. It took months before she could trust that her presence was real again, that her expertise mattered, that she didn't need a chemical enhancement to be taken seriously. She left the pharmaceutical company. She couldn't continue working with compounds designed to alter human biology. Knowing how easily enhancement became control, she started teaching instead. A university position, working with students who hadn't learned yet that authentic authority didn't require chemical assistance. She never recreated the compound, never tried to publish the discovery. She never told anyone what she'd learned about the thin line between influence and domination, between enhancement and addiction, between power that serves and power that controls. Years later, she still thought about that bottle, about the invisible power she'd contained in glass, about how removing the cap had released something that changed everything, about how the most dangerous power is the kind you can't see, the kind that influences without announcing itself, the kind that makes resistance impossible while feeling like a choice. She'd created it, used it, become dependent on it, and ultimately destroyed it, because she'd learned what power really was. It's not the ability to make people do what you want. It's the ability to trust your own presence without chemical assistance, the ability to accept disagreement without feeling diminished, the ability to exist with authority that comes from within, rather than being applied from the outside. Some discoveries should remain unmade. Some powers should stay contained. Some bottles should never be opened. She knew that now. She carried that knowledge like a scar, a reminder that the most seductive power is the invisible kind, the kind that promises enhancement but delivers dependence, the kind that makes you powerful while making you hollow. The bottle was destroyed, but the lesson remained. That power without authenticity is tyranny. That influence without consent is a violation. That invisible power is the most dangerous kind because you do unsee it, controlling you until you couldn't function without it. She lives with that understanding now. She works with her students. She teaches them about molecular structure and biological response. But she also teaches them something else. Something not in the curriculum. That the most important chemistry isn't in the compounds you create. It's in the presence you bring. And that presence doesn't come from a bottle. It comes from accepting that you're enough, all on your own. That your authority is real. And that invisible power isn't power at all. It's just another form of prison, disguised as freedom. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more thought-provoking content.